Record on the cloud. Welcome everybody. Today we are learning the parsha of Vayetzei, and we have a fascinating lesson which I think everyone will find a bit of relevance because every one of us is a leader in one way or another. And as a leader, everyone wonders, what does it take to be a leader and what kind of biblical recognition are there for leaders? Let's find out. Not only that, we are going to discover that there's something specific that a leader must do, and that is what makes him a leader. Let us get involved. We always go around the table and let us elect immediately. Rabbi Shimon, please read for us source number 1, source number 2, and then I'll interrupt you, and then you'll go to the Rebbe. Please.
Are you able to put it in the chat since I don't have it?
Someone will post it in the chat. Thank you. Off you go, Rabbi Shimon.
And Jacob left Beersheba, and he went to Haran. And Jacob left. Was he the only one to leave the city? Many donkey and camel drivers left too. Why the special mention? Rabbi Azariah, in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Shimon, learns from this choice of words that while the righteous man is in the city, he is its splendor and its majesty. When he departs from there, its splendor and its majesty has departed.
Thank you, Reb Shmuel. So we have a pasuk. There is a verse in the Torah which says, Vayetzei Yaakov mi be'er Shava vayelech Harana. I ask you, he leaves the town, he goes somewhere else. Is it important to know from where he left? Not only that he left, okay, but many people leave. Chaim, Rabbi Markovits, left New York, left New Jersey, and left Atlanta, and no one wrote a verse about me. So why the need to emphasize Jacob left Be'er Sheba? Okay, question number 1. That's the question we're dealing with today. Where did he go, by the way? He goes to Haran. He goes to Harana. That might feature later on. In the meanwhile, the Medrash Rabbah brings a line which I'd like you to pay attention to. It's the last 3 lines of that paragraph published in our source notes. While the righteous man is in the city, he is its splendor and its majesty. When he departs from there, its splendor and its majesty has departed. And that's why it's important in a way to know that he's gone. He's gone. It's important to know that he's not here anymore because he's taken something with him. Let's identify what. And for that, we ask Rabbi Shmuel, please continue.
So I really feel
The Rebbe, what about Isaac and Rebekah? Regarding Jacob's departure, Rashi writes, Scripture had only to write that Jacob went to Haran. Why did it also mention his departure? This teaches that the departure of a righteous man from a place makes an impression. For while the righteous man is in the city, he is its beauty, he is its splendor, he is its majesty. When he departs from there, its beauty has departed, its splendor has departed, its majesty has departed. And likewise, regarding the verse from Ruth, and she went forth from the place, stated in reference to Naomi and Ruth. The following question is asked by all the commentators. How can the city have been divested of its beauty, splendor, and majesty, while his parents, Isaac and Rebekah, remained in the city?
Great questions to ask. So we've got a couple of things. One thing though to take a look at is that Rashi, who is the #1 commentator on the Torah, focuses on the fact that the Torah makes a specific mention of Jacob leaving Beersheba. But isn't the main point where he went? He went to Haran. So the Medrash and together Rashi tell us that the Torah wants to stress how when a righteous person is the light and life of the city, and when he leaves, it makes a big difference to the town. And so everybody wants to know, well, if a righteous person leaving impacts the city and takes away from its inherent splendor, then hold on a second. Jacob lived next to his dad. Jacob lived next to his mom. Isaac and Rebekah are both in town. So why does it say that the splendor, the majesty, and the beauty of the city are gone, but the greatest of the great, the second forefather, lives in town too. And this, my friends, is the beginning of a lesson that will blow your socks off. Source number 3, let's ask Alan. Can you read for us source number 3, please?
How can we compare Ruth, the only righteous one in her location, with Jacob, who left behind Isaac and Rebekah? Rabbi Azariah, in the name of Rabbi Shimon, said, "The merit of one righteous person is incomparable to 2 righteous people."
Okay, thank you, Alan. So we've got in the previous Medrash, which we read, we saw how when Ruth left, when Ruth left the land of Moab, heading to the land of Israel, the verse says they left the place, and it comes with that notion of they've left it all behind. Why is it important to mention that? Isn't the point that they're going somewhere else? They're going to Bethlehem. Let's talk about where they're headed. The answer is kind of the same. When a righteous person leaves, the city loses something special. Its special glow, its aura, the environment that there's someone special there is gone. That's when this holy person goes. But the Medrash has something else to tell us. The Medrash has a question to ask. The Medrash says Ruth may have been the only righteous person in Moab, but was Jacob the only righteous person in his town in Beersheba? And again, the same question is repeated. What about Jacob's parents, Isaac and Rebekah? They lived in the city of Beersheba. So why do we say that the city lost its splendor? So if you don't have the question oozing out of your ears already, the question is why do we call it that he's left and he's taken the glory with him? Someone holy still remains. And this is the answer brought in the Medrash. This is what he says. The answer that how can we compare these 2 stories? How can we compare these 2 people? Ruth left and Jacob left. Jacob left Isaac and Rebekah behind. You're right, but it's a diminishing numbers. It's a numbers game. And that's why that's why the merit of one righteous person is incomparable to 2 righteous people, and that's how it's all gone and comparable in a way. Let's take a look what the Rebbe has to say next, coming up, and let's continue with Alan, please. The miraculous cloud.
I'm sorry, are you talking about the commentators cite the answer? Or do you want to move on?
Yes, take it away, please.
The commentators cite the answer of the Midrash. How can we compare Ruth, the only righteous one in her location, with Jacob, who left behind Isaac and Rebekah? The merit of one righteous person is incomparable to 2 righteous people. However, Rashi used different terminology. He said that its beauty has departed, its splendor has departed, its majesty has departed. Not only has the departure of the one righteous person made an impression, but moreover, all the beauty, splendor, and majesty have departed. Was that indeed the case? Okay,
so we now we're in this conundrum in a way. There is it really all gone? Is there anything left? This one, that one person is there, 2 people are there, Isaac, Rebekah, Ruth, Jacob. We're in a bit of a space. Let's break it down to what it means when you have a righteous person local. There's a good joke for this for a moment. It's a true story, but it's a joke. There was once a traveling rabbi traveling through Europe, and he stops in a town, and the town rabbi in the village is a self-proclaimed righteous man. He's a tzaddik in his own mind, right? So he gets up there and he's telling off the community how they're all wicked people and he's righteous. So then what happens next is the rabbi, this guest rabbi who, rabbis stay over in rabbis' houses. He's sleeping the night in the local rabbi's house. He unsheaths a machete and he starts to sharpen it. And he says to the local rabbi, says to him, there's a very big problem in this town. there isn't anyone righteous here buried. And when it comes to the days before the high holy days, you need to go to the burial plot of a righteous man and pray. So since you're such a righteous guy, I think it's time to inter you locally. So he's sharpening the knife, and the local rabbi realizes that he's in a bit of a pickle. And so he starts to say, I'm not really so righteous. I'm not really so good. Yeah, I did this sin. I did that sin. And the guest rabbi is listening, and he's sharpening, and he's listening. Okay. He said, but still, I'm still way more righteous than all the people you just shouted at. He says, yeah, but you know what I did, and you know what else I did. And he lays out all of the sins until finally the rabbi says, well, if you're such a sinner, how can you be a rabbi altogether? And that was in a way the guest rabbi helped the local rabbi to recognize his own areas of improvement. Do not worry, there was no slaughter involved in this story. Okay, but as we move on, let's move straight into Isaac and Rebecca and the local community. And we have something to deal with. There's a lesson to learn. Let us ask. Mal, do you have the documents pulled up by you?
Yes.
Okay, can you read for us section B, the first, you'll read actually the whole section B, it looks like, but I will interrupt you after the first long paragraph, okay?
Okay. Isaac and Rebecca in the local community. We can explain Rashi's statement that the city lost its beauty, splendor, and majesty despite the presence of Isaac and Rebecca in the following straightforward manner. In continuation of the passage, during God's message to Jacob, he introduces himself as the God of Isaac. Rashi makes the following comment. We do not find in scripture that God associates his name with the living righteous by writing the God of so-and-so. Nevertheless, here he associated his name with Isaac because his eyes had become dim and he was confined to his home, and he was like a dead person. The evil inclination have ceased from him.
Thank you. So when Jacob left Be'er Sheba on his way to Haran, he rested overnight and he received a revelation from God in his dream. And it was in that revelation where Hashem promises that the land of Israel, belonging then to the Canaanites, would be given to his descendants, to the Jewish people. When God talks to Jacob, God calls himself, I, the God of Abraham and Isaac. What's the issue? The issue is that we haven't yet found any moment where the Torah, where God calls himself, I am the God of Abraham or the God of Jacob, when either are alive. So this is a unique moment in the Torah where God says, I am the God of Isaac, and Isaac is still in the living. Well, why does Hashem call himself the God of Isaac in this passage? Rashi immediately fills us in on this and tells us, well, Isaac was old. Isaac was blind. Old and blind is a great way to sustain your righteousness. If God was to say, I am the God of so-and-so, but what happens if I'm the God of Esav? Well, Esav goes off the way. He's not so righteous. The relationship is a bit sour right there. But with Isaac is no longer in a position to go off the way. And since he can't go off on the way, God calls himself, I am the God of Isaac, because it's kind of done. It's kind of done. That is here the lesson that Rashi picks up, and that brings us to continue. Mal, take it away, the rest of the comments.
Who is on the streets? This being the case, the young Torah student will no longer question why Jacob's departure created this vacuum despite his father's presence. Isaac was confined to his home, unable to share his personality with the people of the city. With the absence of his presence in the streets of the city, he wasn't able to contribute to the city's reputation. With regard to Rebecca, in addition to the Jewish traditions of modesty, she was consistently needed in Isaac's presence. Being that he was blind, he could not take care of himself, and he needed someone at his side at every moment. This role was filled by Rebecca, his devoted wife.
I'll interrupt you right here. We just ruled out two important people from being the leaders of the city. We rule out Isaac. Isaac is kind of old. He can't go out on the street. We rule out Rebecca. Rebecca's stuck. She's with her husband, taking care of him. Well, who is the personality keeping the people in line on the street at this point? In a moment, we'll discover that the only person who's able to engage with the population is Jacob. Mal, go for it.
As a result, the only of the three righteous people, Isaac, Rebecca, and Jacob, who were present on the city streets after Isaac's physical decline, was Jacob. As he went from his father's home to study Torah in the study hall of Shem and Ever, and upon his return home, he passed through the city and naturally came into contact with the local population. He impacted them to the extent that, in Rashi's words, he is its beauty, he is its splendor, he is its majesty, Jacob alone. Therefore, upon his departure, the city's beauty has departed, its splendor has departed, its majesty has departed.
And so Isaac and Rebecca ruled out because they can't engage with the people who can engage with the people, and it's only left Jacob. Jacob, this holy man, engaging with the people, walking in and out of town, hanging out with the people, he makes an impact. And as such, when Jacob, the impactor, the influencer, leaves, that's when we can say the beauty, the splendor, and the majesty go with him. So what do we see from here? That even if a person fits the slate of being holy and righteous, if he's not making an effect on the people of his space, the people of his surroundings, then he's not going to be called the beauty of the location. Even a very righteous person must remain, he must maintain contact with the people next door, with the people in his space, with the people in the market, and bring positive change to them as well. This, my friends, is something that only Jacob does. And that, I think, is a blow your socks off take-home message from our lesson, which is only halfway through. It's already amazing. And that is, each of us as individuals, we live wherever we are. Some of us in the north, some of us in central, some of us in the south, some of us in the southern hemisphere. Wherever we are, we must have our realm of influence. And if we decline on our influence, that's when the beauty and the splendor is no longer related to us. It's not, by the way, saying it this way sounds like it's about me. How am I going to be the best? It's not about me. It's more about my responsibility to the greater community. As a member of the greater community, I must provide. I must stand up and say, I can lead in this area. And whatever area it is, go forth and be a leader. And if I don't do that, I'm not using the potential that I've got stored within me. God has graced me with potential. And if I don't make the most of it, then I'm squandering that opportunity. That, my friends, is a lesson that we can learn from this verse right here. Now, we really could be done for the day. Section C introduces Noah. What's the connection? We're going to find a similarity here between Noah and our story. In a way, the verses refer to Noah as a righteous man. And then the commentators say, oh, not so righteous. Had he lived in the time of so-and-so, he wouldn't have been the important guy that he was. Why are we taking away from his importance? We shouldn't take away from his importance just because somebody else lived on. Let's see a similar notion in application. And for this, we call upon, I think we're left with Diana. Have you read yet? I don't think so. Have you got the text in front of you, Diana?
Yeah, I have the text. I haven't.
Okay, so read for us, please. Source 4, source 5, source 6, and I think you'll read source 7 as well.
Okay,
4, 5, 6, 7. Off you go.
hold on. Okay. Source 4, Genesis 6.9. There are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man. He was perfect in his generation. Noah walked with Hashem. Source 5, Zohar on the verse. He was perfect in his generation, but he was not considered perfect in later generations, such as in the generations of Abraham, Moses, and David. Source 6, Rashi. In his generation, compared to his generation, he was righteous, but had he lived in Abraham's generation, he would not have been considered of any importance.
Just a quick interruption before we go to source 7. So we've said that had he been in another time, he wouldn't have been so important. The commentators say, well, hold on a second. Noah and Abraham overlapped on the calendar. Chronologically, they lived in the same time. They had, believe it or not, when Abraham was Noach years old, that's when Noach passed away. Noach is the gematria, the numerical value of 58. When Abraham was 58 years old, that's when Noah passed away. So my friends, did Noah live at the same time as Abraham? Yes, he did. And so the question becomes, why does it say, well, had he lived in the time of Abraham? But he did. And here is the answer. Diana, please take it away.
Source 7. Nitzuzi Zohar, Noah, FN 13. This calls for explanation. Why does he say, had he lived in Abraham's generation? He actually lived in Abraham's generation. Noah passed away in Abraham's 58th year. You want me to
Awesome.
continue?
Thank you very much, Diana. And let's ask Rabbi Shmuel, can you pick up the rest of this section, section C? The Rebbe is going to clear this part of the conversation. Let's go.
The simple reason, an answer according to Torah's straightforward interpretation. When God commanded Abraham to move to the land of Israel, Rashi explained that it would be for your own pleasure and well-being. God told him, there I will make you into a big nation. But if you remain here, you will not merit children. Also, I will make you world famous. Clearly, before this incident with Abraham, the world didn't know of his greatness. During that era, the most famous righteous man was Noah. Obviously, we cannot suggest that during that period, before Abraham received world fame, Noah would not have been considered of any importance. Only once Abraham's greatness became known far and wide, could we suggest that in comparison to Abraham, Noah would not have been considered of any importance. Being that Abraham achieved fame only after he left his childhood home when he was 75 years old, as stated explicitly in the verse, Rashi's statement is quite sensible. In Abraham's moment of fame, Noah would not have been considered of any importance, because that took place a number of years after Noah's passing. Noah passed away when Abraham was 58, and Abraham's name began to spread when he was 75. This further concurs with the assertion in Hasidic teachings that Abraham's earlier outreach endeavors did not make a long-lasting impact, and that his main long-term influence was a result of his work after God spoke to him at age 75. Clearly, it was at that moment that Abraham's generation truly began. Thus, in Abraham's generation, when Abraham was 75, Noah would have been considered ordinary.
Thank you, Reb Shmuel. So what have we got in this point? We discover how Abraham, his real influence started later on. And that's when we start calling him, we start giving him credence. until he was 75, he had made an influence, but he wasn't the guy that Abraham was meant to be. And so we don't count Abraham as his full-on energy and generation in expression until he hits his prime, 75 years old. And now that he's 75, well, had anyone else lived in his time, they would not have been nearly as good as Abraham. Well, yes. But Abraham, when Abraham was overlapping with Noah, he wasn't in his prime yet, and therefore Noah doesn't lose that status that he had already earned of being so righteous. By the way, just taking notice, even Abraham, the greatest of the great, the first, has a season in his life where his influence was not everlasting. And I'd like to suggest, this is me going off tangent, that each of us, we look sometimes at our own peckle, we look at our achievements and we say, it's not good enough. We look at ourselves and we say, I could do more. You're right, you can. Stick to it, like Abraham, continue to study, continue to meditate, continue to influence, and you will get better. And you will become a leader in your own way, and you will blossom. And there is a verse to be found in the tractate Megillah, which says, Yogata umatzasa. If you put in the effort and you reap the harvest, that's believable. If you reap harvest without work, it's nothing. It's not good enough. If you put in effort and you didn't get anything out of it, you didn't put in enough work. It's the guy who puts in the solid work, he's getting the results every time. It always works. And that's what we see with Abraham. 75 years of hard work, and only when he turned 75 did it all come together. That's the end of the tangent. Let's go into section D. Section D brings a similar thing to notice, but with the great Tana, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. A little bit of history on Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Number one, does anyone remember the holiday of Lag BaOmer? Lag BaOmer is the passing day, the Yom Hilula of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Have you ever been to Israel and they took you to the north? They took you to Tzfat, and on the way they stopped in Meiron. Meiron is the burial place of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Have you ever studied the Zohar? Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai authored the Zohar. That is what he's famous for. And here we go.
And that's where they put the boys' ears at the age of 3.
That's right. There is an extra special
I was
emphasis.
there for Lag BaOmer.
You did it once. There's a special emphasis.
In Eretz Israel, and you have to close your windows or you get smoke in your apartments.
Okay, look at that. There is a special emphasis to cut the child's hair when he turns 3 over there. I do not know why. Let's move to source number 8, section D, and we will ask Alan, can you pick it up, please? Source number 8, and then soon the Sikha, please.
Hezekiah said that Rabbi Virmiah said in the name of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, I can absolve the entire world from judgment for sins.
Hold on a second. This is an important words. If you have it in the Hebrew in the textbook, I'm going to read the last 2 lines. It says from the third word, Yochol ani liftor es kol ha'olam kulo min hadin. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai says, I can absolve the entire world. I can save everybody from judgment for their sins. That is how great, how holy, how special, how awesome Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai was. Now we're all wondering the same question. If he can do it, let him do it. And if he does it, what difference does it make to you and me? If a person's a sinner and then the great holy righteous man comes and cleans up my slate, well, did I change? Have I become a better person? Let's continue. Alan, off you go.
Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai said, I can absolve the entire world from judgment for sins. Now, if people will remain unchanged after Rabbi Shimon absolves them of their sins, what favor has he done for them? The Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, and it is stated in many works of Jewish ethics, that the Torah is a Torah of kindness. Thus, even the punishments stated therein bring reward to those who experience them. The Alter Rebbe compares the people receiving these punishments to the young son of a king who has soiled himself, and the king wishes to clean him so that they will be able to be together. To clean up the mess, cold water might suffice. However, hot water is sometimes necessary, and very hot water is sometimes necessary as well. At that moment, it might seem like a punishment, but obviously the ensuing benefit is far greater. The son, now clean, can reunite with his father. This raises the question, if Rabbi Shimon can absolve the individual of his punishments, he also withholds from him the ensuing benefits, the opportunity to cleanse oneself and reunite with God. If so, what good is Rabbi Shimon's offer? The explanation, when Rabbi Shimon declares that he has the ability to erase the punishments, he obviously means that he could cause the cleansing to occur in different ways while avoiding pain and suffering. It's a special approach which only Rabbi Shimon knows to do. This is expressed in the fact that Rabbi Shimon opened the well springs of the inner dimension of Torah. They spilled like rain from the heavens and rose up like the well springs of the earth. Today, even a young child on the street can study his teachings. In his merit, in the merit of his teachings, behavior, and influence, he has made his path a reality for all people. He gave them the ability to transform their behavior.
Thank you, Alan. So we take a look at Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He says, hey, I can absolve the whole world all in one shot. And you wonder, well, go ahead, go do it. And what's the value of that, by the way? And there's an issue here. If he does it, then we're going to miss out on an important step. Yes, he can clean up my slate for me, but will I get it done? And, you know, the Rebbe brings one example, and another example might be a person has to do the hard work on his own. If the teenager doesn't do the work on his own, then he'll never feel good about what he's done. He won't feel accomplished. He needs to work, right? He needs to work hard. And that's a similar question that we're facing Rabbi Shimon with. And it seems that Rabbi Shimon had a way he could absolve, but he also taught them how to change. And he did that by teaching the inner dimension of the Torah, by giving them a new impression of Torah and its understanding and its ways. He was able to influence the people to change themselves for the better. And like that, you have the absolution, and you also have the genuine influence and the improvement of the individual. Because when he takes with him the inner dimension of the Torah and the ethics that the Torah has to carry you with, kind of in a way, the secrets that the Torah teaches you of how to lift up and how to become a better person, well, then the pain kind of you don't need that cleansing anymore because you've already improved, you worked on yourself, and that's something that comes out of the Torah. And again, we see, at least I see it, how Rabbi Shimon is a leader to his people and is lifting them up and showing them a new direction, and is really taking responsibility for the community. Yitzchak was not able to take. Isaac wasn't able to take responsibility for the community. He was bedridden. He was blind. Jacob is remembered for how he led the people, for how he influenced the people, and he made indelible change. He influenced them strongly. Similarly, Abraham is remembered, his season, his prime is known for the time that he could influence the people. And again, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai took it upon himself to teach the part of the Torah that would change the individual the most. And my friends, if you're wondering, if you're looking for a teaching of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, we've quoted quite a couple. And not only that, we've quoted messages that come through the new way of learning that he was the teacher of, which is ultimately Chassidut. And that, my friends, is the lesson for all of us. And that's what I bless you all with. May we all find the strength and take it upon ourselves to lead in our space. I'm not asking you to get on top of the, what is it, the tea box or the soap box? It's one of the boxes. You don't have to get up on the box and become a preacher. If you want to, go ahead. I won't stop you. I will encourage you to gather friends and study together the resources we have here. But at the same time, you don't have to become a rabbi. You don't have to become a preacher or a teacher. You have to become an influencer in your circle. In another way to say it, when you get together for what's that game called? Mahjong. When you're playing Mahjong together, right? And everyone's chit-chatting and talking about so-and-so and what renovations the other guy did. Be the leader and say, let's take a moment to talk about something positive and good. Let's mention that we're also Jewish and that we also have a parsha to talk about as well. Yeah, you stick out, like a sore thumb, you might stick out, but you become the influencer. You become the person inspired and the person that people look to for inspiration. My friends, be inspired, go inspire. Let's learn a lesson from Abraham. Let's learn a lesson from Rabbi Shimon, and let's learn a lesson from Jacob, and let's be inspirational. Good Shabbos.
Shabbos.
And it's a soapbox.
Good job.